Hello, welcome to my presentation, Recent Advances in ADHD, From History to Treatment. My name is Omar Thomas Sr., and today I'll guide you through the historical background, clinical criteria, neurobiology, therapeutic options, and practical considerations for ADHD, particularly for parents and educators. ADHD affects 10% of school-aged children worldwide and frequently continues into adulthood. In the United States, an estimated 15.5 million adults live with ADHD. However, only one-third received stimulant prescriptions last year, and three-quarters of those seeking to fill them found themselves unable to do so. Core features include inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, though the pattern of symptoms can be different for each sex at varying stages in one's life. Even more striking, certain ADHD-like behaviors were described as early as 1753, well before the advent of modern psychiatry. The DSM-5 criteria for ADHD includes 6 or more symptoms of inattention or hyperactivity impulsivity. These must have been present before age 12 and continue into the teen years. They also disrupt people's daily living. We can observe and start a different approach to this thought and take a way more systematic look at what changes could lift another 3 or 4 years off the global burden of the disorder. The change from DSM-4 to DSM-5 led to a 27% increase in the adult ADHD prevalence, from 2.8% to 3.55%. It often runs in families and is associated with other psychiatric disorders. Mood disorders such as depression and anxiety are especially likely, but it is not limited to them. Patients may also have disruptive behavior problems that include oppositional defiant disorder or intermittent explosive disorder. Likewise, these people are very susceptible to drugs and substance abuse problems. Neurobiological study showed that there are well-established structural differences between those diagnosed with ADHD and those that are not. For instance, reduction in gray matter can be demonstrated in places like the neocortex and hippocampus. Schematic columns will be different from those seen at birth and as our DNA changes over generations. Diffusion MRI imaging has revealed disruptive white matter pathways around frontostriatal circuits, the corpus callosum, and cingulum, usually in areas where they are vital to complex systems. In functional MRI of 10,000 subjects, contact with so-called youth with ADHD often found increased connectivity between deep brain structures, the caudate, putamen, and nucleus accumbens, and frontal attention control regions. On a molecular level, gene activity related to neurotransmitter communication is altered. There is some speculative research suggesting that practices of, or diagnosis of ADHD might have had evolutionary significance. For instance, by allowing societies to split up their foraging groups, people with ADHD could be sent off on minor errands while the rest carried on more important work. Treatment for attention deficit disorder usually involves medication at first. The first is methylphenidate, which is a stimulant, while non-stimulants include atomoxetine or alpha agonists. Notably, a large Swedish study found ADHD medications were associated with meaningful reductions in suicidal behavior, 17%, substance abuse, 15%, transport accidents, 12%, and crime or school dropouts, 13%. On the non-pharmacological front, recent evidence shows that skill-based physical activity interventions boost working memory by 15% in children with ADD. Since the outbreak of the pandemic, England's number of ADHD prescriptions has been rising by an annual compound rate of 18%, with methylphenidate is still the most prescribed, but lisdexamfetamine shows a 55% increase. Experts warn not to be dependent on social media for learning and recommend regular diagnosis and treatment. In conclusion, for parents, teachers, and counselors, what works best are consistent routines, behavior interventions and accommodations, and positive reinforcement. Just as important is to identify areas where ADHD sufferers excel, like creativity or intense concentration focused on a subject they love, in order to help develop these strengths through school or socially minded strategies. The following are a list of references and sources that I was able to use to come up with this presentation. This is the conclusion of the matter. Thank you and have a good night.